Hello and welcome back to the Andy Takes That Chance Cult Heroes series. Today with myself, Matt and Kosi, we have a man who made 177 appearances for Huddersfield Town from 1991 to 1994, scoring 47 goals along the way, and most of them absolute blockbusters. Welcome to the podcast. It's Phil Starbuck.
Hey, how are you doing? Great to be with you.
Great. Thanks for coming on, Phil. I'm really looking forward to this. One of my absolute heroes when I was a kid. So this will be a lot of fun for me to go through. And I like to start these podcasts with a little bit of information into your backgrounds of how you got into football. Because I think prior to academies popping up in the late 90s, it's very interesting to understand how people got into football, you know, how they were signed, sometimes at 14, and really sort of the journey that took you to Nottingham Forest as a schoolboy.
Okay, well, I was playing for my school team, and I got spotted by a guy called Alan Hill, who was a Forest scout at the time. And from the age of 11, I ended up going to the City Ground for trials, and they were one of the first teams that started an under-11s team, but we actually were called JCS Garages. So one of the directors at Forest had a garage called JCS Garages, and we were sponsored by them. And so we were actually called JCS Garages, but we were obviously Nottingham Forest, but we couldn't be called by that name. So we played in leagues our own age. You can imagine players coming from all around the country, because obviously with academies now, there's travel restrictions. There was none of that then. So we had players from Scotland, Ireland. They were coming all over the place each week, although we had that core team. And for the first couple of years, it was a bit of a waste of time in the sense that we were literally winning 17, 18, 20-0. So what they did is they put us into the Mansfield Miners Welfare League, the men's league. Which was actually fantastic for us because we got kicked up and down Dale. It was much more physical, but the games were much closer. So you think we're at that point like 13, 14 years of age, playing against adults from a miners' welfare town that they were sick of getting run around with these young wannabe players. So we literally got kicked up and down Dale. But it really stood us in good stead. And so from the age of 11, I was going down the city ground. And at the age of 14, I signed associate schoolboy forms. And then at the age of 16, I left school early, actually, to sign for Forest. I wasn't interested in academia. My absolute focus was football. I wanted to play for Forest. Clough was my hero. And although just before my exams, actually, I got invited to Belgium with the full-time apprentices. They'd had some injuries, which was a real honour for me. And my dad said, well, you know, what a great opportunity. But the gut wrencher was that it coincided with my exams at school, my actual exams. And so my dad said, listen, son, you're old enough now to make the right decision. I will let you make the choice. So I went to Belgium and I never took any exams. And the irony was that when I got back, I had about 6 months left at school, had a fantastic time in Belgium. I scored the winner in the final and I was on a real high. Get back to the UK, get back to school. And I had one exam left. And the irony is that exam was RE. And I'm like, absolutely no chance. And I spoke to the headmaster and I said, I want to leave school now. And he said, Phil, you've got a letter from Forest. You've got a full-time contract, 3-year deal. Off you go. And I left school that day and it was the happiest day of my life leaving school.
Every player who played for Nottingham Forest in the 70s, 80s, early 90s has a brilliant Brian Clough story. I absolutely love sitting and listening to, like some Mark Crossley, etc., tell stories about Brian Clough. They're so entertaining, so funny. You must have. I know Brian Clough was probably coming to the last sort of 5 or 6 years, wasn't he, when you sort of went towards the first team? But you must have 1 or 2 decent Brian Clough stories from back then.
Mate. I could write a book.
Probably should, yeah.
Do you know what? There was one occasion when we actually played. It was the year before I signed for Town. We played at Town in the FA Cup. I wasn't on the bench. I was only a kid, but Clough made me sit on the dugout next to him. So I was on he put me on the bus. I had to travel, doing all the jobs in the dressing room like you do and getting all the kit ready. And he made me sit next to him in the dugout. So the game's going on. I can't even remember the score, to be quite honest, and you'll understand why in a minute. There was a photographer that had walked in front of him. You remember the old ground? You're a bit of a distance from the edge of the pitch, and a photographer had walked in front of him and stood there taking pictures, and it was really getting on Clough's nerves. So this photographer quickly moved on, goes all the way around, and is on the halfway line on the opposite side of the pitch. And Clough nudged me, and he said, Starbuck, if that effing photographer stands in front of me again, I want you to chin him. And if you don't chin him, I'll effing chin you. And I'm like, flipping heck, here we go. And I didn't know whether he was being serious or not. Photographer walks around to the corner, then comes back down to this corner. So he's only half a pitcher's length away from us. And he's nudged me and he says, Starbuck, I'm serious, son. If you don't chin him, I'm going to chin you, son. And I'm like, I knew at this point that he was serious. And he's coming closer and I'm looking at me. I'm not watching the game. I'm watching me watch, thinking, come on. I just want half time to arrive. We're about 10 minutes from half time, and this photographer is about 15, 20 yards away. And he grabbed me by the shirt and tie. He yanked me over. He said, son, if you don't hit him, I'm going to hit you. So I'm like, I'm literally crapping myself. And I don't know what to do. It's about 5 yards away from being in front of Cloughy. And I'm thinking, I've got to make a decision. Do I go and chin him? Or do I just take one myself and get chinned? I'm like, what do I do? I'm like 17. I'm absolutely crapping myself. And I kid you not, I made a decision in my heart that I'm just going to have to go and chin him. And I just have to face the consequences. And he's literally just about to step in front of us, and the referee blew his whistle. And I'm like the most relief man in the world. And I'm just about to get up to walk down the tunnel, and he grabbed me and shoved me down onto the chair again, and he just made me stay there. When everyone had gone, all the players were off the pitch, he sat with me, and he said, Starbuck, would you have hit him? I said, well, yeah, I would have to have hit him, because you told me to. And he went, son, you're a bloody legend. Now, the moral behind the story was he wanted people that would do what he says. And if I would have done that, his philosophy would have been that I would do anything. And I would have done anything for the bloke. And I would have just gone and hit him, and I would have had to face the consequences. And then I'm crapping myself still. We get in the dressing room, and flipping Ian Botham's in the dressing room. And it was the time when the World Cup had just finished. Steve Hodge had just come back from the World Cup when he got Maradona's shirt, the hand of God and all that crap. And Ian Botham, not Ian Botham, Jeff Boycott, is in the dressing room. And Clough's mate, Jeff Boycott. And he said, lads, my friend Jeff's going to do the half-time team talk. And he absolutely battered Steve Hodge. He's like, how the bloody hell did you get to the World Cup? You crap. You're playing like you tonight, like you've never played before. Have you ever played football? Do you know what you're doing? And Jeff Boycott is battering Steve Hodge. So they're the two moments of my first kind of experience of Huddersfield Town.
Having to chin the photographer.
And Jeff Boycott doing the team talk and battering Steve Hodge at half time.
That's definitely a good Brian Clough story, I think, is that, Phil?
Bizarre.
That photographer, was he a Huddersfield Town one? Did you run into him again later on?
I didn't know, thankfully. No clue.
So I thought that could have been an interesting. That could have been an interesting one. So
imagine if I'd have chinned him though, and then signed for Huddersfield.
Yeah, on press day.
About the next year.
I know. I'd have been amazing. But how did that move to Huddersfield come about then? Why sign for Huddersfield Town, and what did Eoin Hand, the manager at the time, say to get you to drop from Nottingham Forest down to the third tier for Huddersfield Town?
So I'd been thinking a long time about putting in a transfer request. I got on really well with Brian Clough, and I'd mentioned to him about putting in a transfer request, and he said, son, I don't want you to. So I left it for a while, and then I'd got to the point where, that last year in Nottingham, I think I started about 10 games. I was always on the bench, and I was getting more and more frustrated. And I eventually decided to put the letter in. And I went to see him. I gave him the letter. And he said, son, stay there. I'm going out my office now. And I'm going to come back in 10 minutes. And when I come back, I don't want to see you here. And I don't want to see that effing letter. So I'm like, oh, bloody hell. What do I do? So I sat there. And I had to make a decision in that moment. And I just knew I wanted to play first team football. And I knew that I had something to offer, a team that would give me a chance to play regular first team football. So I went, I went and I left the letter there, and Cloughy wasn't happy. And that was towards the end of the season. There's only about 6 weeks of the season left, and then I get a phone call that Huddersfield were interested, and Forest gave Huddersfield permission to speak to me, and I ended up driving up to meet Eoin Hand. I remember coming to Town's ground and meeting Eoin, and Ian Ross was there as well, his assistant. And Eoin he's one of the best managers I played for. He was such a great man manager. He knew what he wanted from his team. He knew what he wanted from individuals, but he was just a great bloke who was straight and down the line, and he treated you like an adult. And he just taught me into, Huddersfield being a family club. We've got great potential. We just need 1 or 2 more players, and we could get promotion. And my friends were saying, whatever you do, Phil, don't sign. Come home and think about it. I was that pleased with the way Eoin had conducted himself and how he would put the club forward. It's the only time in my career that I actually signed there and then. And I actually signed, drove back to Nottingham, and I was a Huddersfield Town player. It's the only time I've ever done it.
And obviously, you join Huddersfield Town and you start the 91-92 season. I think we pick up the Starbuck Huddersfield Town story in that season, your very first season. You scored your first goals against Darlington in the League Cup. But the first time I think we were maybe introduced to a Starbuck special was away at Bury. And that's a game that really sticks out. I remember being a kid at the time and remember the old teletext CFAX. I remember looking at CFAX at my friend's house, and it was Bury 4, Huddersfield 0. And I think me and my friend just went, all right, we've lost this one. And we went out and played football in the park. And
Phil,
then
my mate was a mascot for this game.
Was he really?
He's a lot older now, yeah. Talk about being a mascot for a game. There's one you're going to never forget at all.
my dad said it's the only time he's been to a Town match when they were crying in the stand. When we equalised, there were people crying in the stand.
Yeah, it was
but it
insane,
was a tremendous match.
And you obviously, we 4-0 down after 40 minutes. Eoin Roberts pulls one back just before half time when Marsden goes down the right and pulls it back. Yep. And then, you set your stall out. This is what you made a career out of, really, wasn't it? Shimmying past a couple of players and smashing one in the top corner. And then, you score again, and the game is, the game's there, isn't it, for Huddersfield Town? And all of a sudden, from 4-0 down, and we'd had some funny results at Bury as well. I think the previous year we'd won or lost 6-0, and the year before it was a 6-0 reversal again. So Bury throws up some really interesting results for Huddersfield Town, and then in the last minute, Simon Ireland stands one up and Eoin Roberts scores at the far post, and Dean Hoyle runs on. You can see Dean running on, the fan carty onto the pitch and jumping up around, which is amazing. But just talk us through that crazy game. And I did hear a story that maybe you went to watch England before it as well, which is quite a good story.
That is true. Yeah, we'd spoken to Eoin, and we'd trained on the Monday, trained on the Tuesday, and we said we want to go and watch England play. That I think we're playing Germany. And he ummed and ahed, and Jacko obviously was the captain. He said, "Oh, Gaff will be fine. We'll go watch the game and we'll be okay." So Eoin okayed it. So we drive to London, and we did not get to the game, suffice to say, and we ended up at the pub, and we didn't get to the match, and we had a great night, but there was no football. So we drove back the next day. We had actually a friend that drove. We hired a minibus, and the friend drove us there and drove us back. And we're on the way back, looking at the newspapers, just trying to get some information about how the game went, just in case Eoin asked us. And it was like we didn't have a Scooby-Doo. So we get to the Bury match. It wasn't the greatest of preparation for some of us. And Eoin said before the game, well, I've let you do what you wanted to do, and I hope today you're going to repay me. So we come in, the results going absolutely pear-shaped, and Eoin absolutely mullered us, and rightly so. He absolutely kicked us up and down Dale. It's back to the old Cloughy days, actually, and he went mental, and rightly so. We were woeful. And something just clicked in the second half. Obviously, Ewan had got one back, and that ball came to me. I think it was Wright who was playing left back at the time, Scouser lad. He just knocked one into me, and I just remember taking it back on my thigh and jinking and twisting and turning. And it was a left footer, which wasn't. It didn't happen very often outside the box. It was normally my right foot because I was predominantly right-footed, but it was a left footer, went in the top stanch, thankfully. And of course, the rest is history. We scored 2 more and equalised to make it 4-4. But it was one of the most memorable games I've ever played in for lots of reasons. And suffice to say, Eoin didn't let us go to watch England again.
That's not because he was Irish either, is it? He was definitely not going to.
There was other reasons. Yeah.
Yes. So around this point, you were becoming a bit of a style icon, believe it or not. So the away shirt worn at Bury, the electric red and black, became really popular, didn't it? Not only just in Huddersfield, but it was apparently used on a catwalk in London. And I can confirm that around this point, there was a 10-year-old child who went into Eddie Taylor's barber in Brighouse and asked specifically for a Phil Starbuck haircut. Some say that he still has an early 90s Phil Starbuck haircut to this day, by the way, as well. But that kit was pretty special, wasn't it, back in the day?
Yeah, we had some great kits. I'm trying to remember the chap's name now that was part of the background and part of all that. The guy that was involved in the new stadium. I can't remember his name now.
Fletcher, was it? Paul Fletcher?
Fletch, that's him, yeah. Is it Paul Fletcher?
Yeah.
He had vision that went beyond where the club were. And he was fantastic for the club. And so, a lot of that was down to him. So it helped the club take steps forward, like little steps. Sometimes when you take big steps, it's hard to carry on and keep it going. But he helped the club to take little steps off the pitch. And so he did great for the club in many ways. And he was probably part of that, all them different kits and the colours. And it stood the club in good stead.
So that season, Town looked like they were going to push for maybe automatics at one point, and then in February it kind of fell away a little bit with 1 win in 8, and Huddersfield dropped to 8th in the table. And Eoin Hand, who had done a really good job up until that point, paid for those results by whether he resigned or was asked to resign. Neither here nor there, but. Can you remember what happened exactly? Was it just down to a couple of injuries? I think Chris Marsden had an injury at the time, didn't he? And it just seemed to fall away temporarily, didn't it?
I don't think there's an easy answer or specific answer where you can put your finger right on it. I think it's football, and just one of those things. There was not one player that would put a Town shirt on that wanted to lose a game. We were all desperate to win. We're desperate to go up. We should have gone up that year. Whether we got complacent, we carried on doing what we'd always done during the course of the week and training and preparation. We didn't do anything different. And so it was just so disappointing. And then when we heard the news that Eoin had been sacked, Eoin was still in his office when we got the news, and so there was myself and a couple of other players went into the office and like, Eoin, what's going on? You can't leave. You've brought us thus far. We don't want you to leave. What's going on? We can sort this out, surely. And obviously not. And he got the sack and he moved on, and we got a new manager. But I don't think you can. There's no easy way of putting your finger on it.
Mm.
No, it was just so disappointing.
Yeah, and Ian Ross took over, who was the assistant, obviously. And Town won 7 of the last 8, finishing third. One of the best defensive records the club has had since World War II. But how good was that midfield pairing? Because Peter Butler came in, didn't he, quite late on loan in that season, and him and Chris Marsden. That's a Premier League midfield, isn't it?
Mate, we had a great team. No, we should have gone up that year. We didn't fulfil the potential, and even the following year, to some extent, we should have done better than we did. But no, it's a long old season. It's about consistency and producing week in, week out. Not just turning up 1 in 4. And we weren't consistent enough. It's okay having a great team on paper, but that great team on paper's got to go out on the pitch and do it week in, week out. And the consistency of the team wasn't there. But we had some fantastic players, and Mazza, my goodness me, he's one of the best players I've ever played with. He had such a great footballing brain; it was unbelievable. And what a left foot! He had a wand of a left foot. So it was amazing what he did. While I was there, I could make runs, and he just knew where I was going to go. We had this connection. He just knew what I was going to be doing, where I was going to be running. But on top of that, he had the ability to deliver. He got such a great left foot. He was able to deliver as well. And no wonder he went on. Obviously, he moved on to Southampton, didn't he? I believe. And
Coventry, Wolves, Southampton. Yeah,
yeah.
But he played at the top for a long time. Yeah,
such a great player, and obviously Peter Butler. They complemented each other. You've got an absolute fantastic ball player in Mazza, who saw the bigger picture, and you got Pete Butler, who's ratting around and scrapping and fighting, and would put his head in and his foot in anywhere. And so, yeah, we had a great team.
Kieran O'Regan as well. He was one of my favourites as well. Back at the time, he was a really good player. Really good player.
Fantastic player. Very, very good player.
Right. So before we get to the climax of the season, you actually won the Goal of the Season award on Calendar. And I'm gonna play a little clip here because it's really, really funny. This is kind of Ian Botham before he got the media training from Sky. So there's a little look at the side, which is quite amusing.
Outrageous. I know where you're going.
I know. But here is the clip, and there's a really strange interview as well from I think it's Nick Hatton, isn't it, at Calendar, where he asks you if you're local. But we'll cut to this and then we'll come back.
In first position, and the goal I thought epitomises football and the way it should be played was goal A, which was scored by Phil Starbuck of Huddersfield Town, and I thought it was just a tremendous flowing move. It started near the halfway line, it was quick, and I think it would have ripped most defences apart. A tremendous goal. Well done. Some great individual skills. There's a couple of very good free kicks that I thought were marvellous. But I went for what I would like to see if I was paying money to go and watch a football match.
And the winner is here. This is Phil Starbuck. Did you know when you scored the goal, did you think that was a great goal?
I thought it was quite a good goal, yeah, but I didn't expect to win it at all, the competition.
Why?
I thought there was a couple in there that was a little bit better than mine, actually, so I was very surprised that I won in the end.
You're not a local lad, are you?
No.
So that was a really strange question to end from Nick Hatton. It's like Nottingham's an hour down the road, but a million miles away, apparently. But that was a phenomenal goal, really, and it showed how good the football was. People going about a lot of the styles these days, Man City, tiki-taka, but the football Huddersfield played in 91-92 was genuinely outstanding at times, and that goal kind of sums up the ability of that team. Fantastic, and Ian Botham I thought was quite right to pick. I can't remember any of the others, by the way, but I'm pretty sure he was quite right to pick that one, Phil.
I mean, to be fair, if if we could bottle that, we'd have won the league week in, week out. My goodness me, there'd have been no stopping us. But that just gave you a glimpse of what we were capable of, and yeah, frightening. We could have beaten many teams on our day, you know, in the division above us as well. You know, I think we beat Sunderland 2 years on the trot in the cup at Sunderland, and
3-0 as well in one game.
Yeah, and outplayed them both times on their home pitch. So we knew we could do it. The biggest thing was doing it every week.
Right, we're going to have to talk about it, Kosi, and unfortunately, we're going to have to talk about that two-legged game in the playoffs against Peterborough. Still sore over 30 years later, but this is the first away game I went to was Peterborough away in the playoffs, and I remember it being so loud in that away end. It was, you know, it felt like the ground was shaking at times. It was unbelievable, and you know, Eoin gives us an early lead, and from memory, we absolutely played them off the park as well. And I've got a little clip I can show you where you're involved with the second goal when it goes 2-1, and you can just see the crowd behind the goal going crazy, and it's such a brilliant cutscene. But we'll just bring to that, and then we'll talk about the 2-2 game.
No doubt. Manager Chris Turner's hoping that Steve Cooper, the sub, can add some experience and height and weight to the forward line. Oh, good play by Billy and by Starbuck. Across it goes. Oh, it's there! There we are with Roberts. Huddersfield Town 2, Peterborough United 1, 60.
So we'll just cut back to that. But that was a brilliant game, really, wasn't it, Phil? Even though the result was probably a bit harsh on you guys in the end.
Yeah, I think that game finished 2-2, and even though it was 2-2 at their place, we felt that we'd done enough. We felt confident that we would go on to beat them, and maybe that was our downfall in the end. You know, obviously, when we got them back to our place, and you know, I scored very quickly in the game early on, and it kind of was a bit of a non-event to half time, and then we're in the second half, and what was it, about 15 minutes to go, and we're still winning 1-0 or so, and all of a sudden it just went peak-tongued, and it was almost like that we took the foot off the gas. We'd stopped pressing, we'd stopped doing the right things, the simple things well, the basic things well, and yeah, they did us a kipper at the end, and it was devastating.
I've got the Phil Starbuck goal here from the first from the home game, I should say.
Barber defending the goal, behind which the Peterborough supporters are standing, of course. Jackson's header. Roberts will flip to Starbuck. But Robinson getting in. Now it comes to Chris Billy. Robinson slips. Billy gets past him.
And you can see the camera shaking because of the noise and the fans moving, you know, in the thing before. It was that Kosi. You must have been at that game as well. I remember being in the grandstand in the seating area, and it was just so loud. It was like nothing I'd ever seen at Leeds Road at any point up until you know, I'd only been following for a couple of years, because obviously quite young. But that was just such a
incredible
atmosphere, wasn't it?
It's nearly blown my PC up here in that, but I think what you've got to remember, there've been so many barren years for Huddersfield Town, so these were the first time, obviously, with the kind of playoffs brought in, and that we'd enjoyed it, well, kind of relative success as well. So I think the question from me, Phil, to you is: do you think you don't want to make excuses? Do you think we scored too early in that game, and maybe we were hanging on to his lead? But I suppose you can't get a better start than that.
I don't think there's a time that's a wrong time to score. I just think once we'd scored, we should have kept pressing. We should have kept at it. And I think, like I said earlier, we took our foot off the gas a little bit and maybe came a little bit complacent. But, you know, it was like a cup final. That should have been like a cup final. We should have been at it from first whistle to final whistle, you know, chasing every ball, tackling every player. You know, there needed to be more urgency in that last half an hour. And there wasn't. Obviously, we can't turn the clocks back now. And no, I can feel it even now. You know, that disappointment, that, you know, gutted. You know, how the flipping heck have we lost that match? And, you know, absolutely gutted. And I still just watching that there then, and it brings it all home. Now, after the game, you know, the dressing room was quiet. There's nothing to be said. And then, you know, you've got to pick yourself up for the next match. You know, how do you do that? You know, you've got to be professional. You know, you've got to pick yourself up again. But that was one of the low points of my time at Huddersfield, losing that match.
The partnership you had, though, with Ewan Roberts that season was absolutely phenomenal. Ewan got 34 goals that season, which was or 35 in total, which was a post-war record. You got 18. Iffy got 14 from out wide. For me, it's the best Huddersfield team that I've, from in my time following Huddersfield. It's without doubt the best Huddersfield side that I've seen that hasn't won promotion. And it just felt a little bit incomplete, really. It was such a shame that, because it was such a great team. But that sort of hangover as well, did that go into the next season? Because the next season, it was a really tough start, wasn't it? I don't think Huddersfield got above 23rd until March. From game one until March, it was the highest we were with 23rd. And, after the end to that season, was it just the hangover? I know we couldn't sign Peter Butler, but we didn't really lose any big players at that early point. Was it just a case of, licking wounds, feeling sorry for yourself, or was it just difficult to get back up after such a disappointment?
Well, I think, once a game's gone, it's gone, hasn't it? You can't do nothing about it. You can't change it. And so, the new season comes. Pre-season was fine. You work hard and you're looking forward to the next season. You've got great hopes because of form from the prior season. But, it's just football. I could do, right, the same pre-match preparation, train really well all week, the same pre-match preparation on the Saturday, get up, do the same things, have my pre-match meal, get to the club, do everything that I always did, and I'm normally on fire, can't wait for the whistle to start. But all of a sudden on this particular day, for whatever reason, the whistle goes and you feel crap and you feel sluggish and you feel tired and you feel off it. And there's no rhyme or reason. And I'm not making excuses. It's just how it is. Nobody in that team that I played for, in that squad of players, there's not one player in that team that ever wanted to play poor. They were genuine lads. We worked hard in training. I don't think anyone could ever put the finger on it. It's just one of them things. No, football's football, isn't it? That's why I think, VAR is flipping rubbish. It ruins football. It ruins the debates in the pub. It ruins the what could have been, should have been, might have been. It takes it all away. And for me, it's ruined football a little bit. I think it's rubbish. If it was up to me, I'd take it out. But I don't think there's an answer to your question, really.
One man who said, I would imagine, I've never spoke to him, but I would imagine one man who thinks another thing ruined football would be the back pass rule, and that would be Tim Clark, I guess, because that seemed to completely send him a bit, not crazy, did it? But he seemed to struggle the most out of a lot of goalkeepers, because the previous season he was phenomenally good, in terms of coming out and taking things in the air. I remember him being a bit of a penalty hero at times. He was good at penalties as well. Was Tim Clark, and
Mm.
the back pass rule came in, and that didn't really help him, did it? And that was another thing on top of things going wrong. Tim Clark had issues with the back pass. Tony Elliott as well was his understudy, wasn't he? It just seemed at this point by March, Huddersfield were bottom, having like I say, never been at the bottom two, and then in walks a hero, a Huddersfield Town hero from the 1980s, Mick Buxton, to be the assistant to Ian Ross. In Town's last 16 games, you won 12, drew 1, lost 3, and went from 24th to 15th. It's actually an incredible escape act, which I don't think gets pushed forward enough. As a great escape, it is really a phenomenal job, and 4 or 5 goals from yourself. But what was it that Mick Buxton did when he came in with Ian Ross that really sort of reignited that brought back the previous season's form?
From a personal perspective, I got on really well with Mick Buxton. I didn't particularly like Ian Ross because he was one of the reasons that Eoin got the sack. There was some backstabbing going on. Ian Ross slept at Eoin Hand's house the night before he got the sack, knowing that he was going to get the sack. So when we went into Owen's office that time, like I shared earlier, and Eoin told us what had happened, we were like, oh, never, that's a disgrace. But of course, Ian took over. I didn't want to play for that bloke, not for what he did. And maybe, there was other players in the team that had that same heart. But when Mick Buxton came in, he was brilliant, genuine, brilliant. He was a man's man. He knew the game. He knew how he wanted to play, and he knew how to motivate the team. If you are prepared to die for the cause, then you'll get results. But when Ian was in charge, there wasn't enough people prepared to die for the cause. And so when Mick came in, that changed. And for me, that was the core reason.
I mean, it looks like 2 + 2 from the outside looking in. Mick Buxton comes in, and all of a sudden this team starts playing again. So that's a link that I'd made, but I didn't want to be the one to say it, if you know what I mean. But that's interesting that you've said that. Do you remember a record that you set in this season when coming on as sub?
Yeah.
Can you remember that game where you?
He would make me sub often, but every time I came on, I scored. Because we didn't get on and we argued, so he'd put me on the bench, and then I'd come on and I'd score. It was hilarious.
And then one particular game you came on and scored instantly, didn't you? I remember being in the cowshed as a kid, and we got a corner. Corner came in, and you flicked it in at the far stick, and that was the record, wasn't it? The fastest ever goal scored by a substitute in the Football League, which is great, really. It's such a great little record, isn't it?
Yeah, it was funny. Yeah, it's class. I couldn't believe it myself. It was perfect. Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
Do you remember Stan Collymore coming that season with Southend and how frightening he was in the FA Cup when Southend came and beat us 2-1?
I was going to say it was about 2 or 3. Yeah, they beat us. Yeah, unbelievable.
He was, he was probably one of the better players I'd seen come to Leeds Road. It was almost like a sneak peek into the future of what a future footballer will look like. All future footballers will look like this in 15 years. It was phenomenal. But despite Town spending most of the season bottom, you still got 11 goals. Ewan got 15. But all of a sudden, everything's about to change going into 93, 94. It's a big season for Huddersfield Town because it's going to be the last season at Leeds Road. But Mick Buxton leaves the club to go to Sunderland, which I was pretty gutted with at the time. Ian Ross decides to follow and enter Neil Warnock for his first spell at Huddersfield Town. And he, very different the different approach, wasn't he, in terms of football to Mick Buxton? But what did he do to sort of change things around initially?
Well, I think that the biggest thing was the dressing room. He was massive on getting the lads together, having nights out together. He was the one that introduced sherry and eggs to the football club. That no one was allowed to go until everybody had a sherry and egg and necked it in one. And you weren't allowed to break the yolk. You had to drink it down in one. But it was hilarious watching some of the lads trying to do it. And what it made us do, it made us not only come together, it made us laugh together. We proper laughed together. So it brought that unity into the dressing room. And that's what he is absolutely brilliant at, bringing unity into the dressing room. Work hard, play hard. When it's a night out, it's time to go out, we're going to go and do it properly. But when it's time to train, time to play, he wants you to put a shift in. And so you can't fault him for that. So he was so good at getting the dressing room together and bringing unity to a football club.
Phil, what were your favourite position? What your preferred position, or would you just play anywhere for anyone, apart from Ian Ross?
Yeah, the bench for Ian Ross. Wow. So, in fact, Neil played me a sweeper for quite a bit in that first season. So I actually really enjoyed that. Although I used to give Neil, I used to drive him nuts because I'd be like, bring the ball down in my own area and drop a shoulder and pass out from the area. And he wanted me to smack it into the stands. And I'm like, I can't do that. That's not me. That's not how I play. If you don't want me to do that, don't play me here. And, but I quite, I never ever played left wing until I came to Huddersfield and it was Neil that put me there. Left wing for a striker is like the graveyard shift, and you never see the ball hardly. But Neil said, listen, all I want you to do is get it, come in and shoot, or come in and put it in the box, and you'll still score goals from the left wing. So I quite enjoyed that spell of the left wing for Neil. But if I had a choice, it would be just in that gap between the midfielders and the strikers. That would
Number
be
10.
my choice now. That number 10 position, trying to find them gaps in between, because you get chance to get the ball in space and turn. The back four's got a problem. Do they bring a player out and mark you? Does a midfield player drop in and mark you? Or do they keep their shape and gamble a bit so you've got all that space in between? So I would have loved that position. Just getting the ball on an off turn and running at the centre halves and making things. I used to live for getting the ball, being able to turn and run at a player. That was my thing. It's a shame it doesn't happen too much nowadays. That one-on-one thing and gambling to try and get past a player and trying to make something happen. So that I'd love to do that. If I had my time now and I was 21 again now, I'd love that position.
So this 93-94 season, we saw quite an upheaval in terms of the players. We saw Chris Marsden leave, Simon Charlton left, Ewan Roberts. They'd all leave sort of either in the summer or through the season, replaced by players from non-league like Richard Logan, John Whitney, Darren Bullock. One of our favourites. It was a transitional season, wasn't it? But Arsenal in the League Cup came around as well, and you got to play at Highbury against your Ian Wright, Tony Adams. But they gave us a bit of a bashing, didn't they, in the first leg? But the second leg, Ian Dunn scores, doesn't he? And it's it was quite a good little result. That, and Town were really a cup side, and by March we're struggling a little bit, just above the relegation zone, without really threatening, I didn't think, to drop in. And then a competition that we'd never paid much notice to before came along, and a game at Stockport in the Autoglass Trophy Northern semi-final, and Town, having lost there 3-0 a couple of weeks earlier, were up against it. But this was a real defining moment of the season, and really a defining moment of Neil Warnock as Huddersfield Town manager. And that game just reignited everything under Neil Warnock for Huddersfield Town, didn't it?
Yeah, I remember the league match when we lost 3. Was it not more than 3? Was it 4?
I think it was 3, according to Wikipedia, the reliable Wikipedia. But
okay, I remember losing away at Stockport midweek, and they got us in on this. Oh, it might have been a Saturday actually. Mickey Lyons was there for a while. Remember, Mickey Lyons came in for a short period of time. The Everton centre off, and he absolutely ran the nuts off us on the Sunday the next day. So it was nice to go back there and get a result. But that competition, my goodness me, no one was bothered, and all of a sudden we could play at Wembley. It's everybody's dream to play at Wembley, and the closer we got, the more exciting it got, didn't it? For the players and for the fans, I'm sure. And it really did something fantastic for Huddersfield as a town.
Phil, if you remember, I remember Warnock were under massive pressure and the crowd were chanting for his head in that January, February time. And he massively needed this competition, but and it came. And I don't know if you were probably concentrating so hard on the game, but do you remember Carlisle fans brought a chicken, didn't they? And they put it behind the goal. And he just feel like it was just a crazy night all round and that as well. I thought they're not going to abandon this game. We were beating them fair and square, but Warnock needed that, and there were a lot of people that were wanting him out. They didn't want anything to do with the football. If we're being honest, Phil, it was awful to watch. So root worn. You were a proper footballer now. I always used to think, God, what must you think of this? Because nothing's ever seemed to come on the deck. But obviously, like you say, Matt, that two-legged semi-final transformed the club and Neil Warnock's career. I think he might have gone if we'd not won that. If we'd have blown that second leg, which we nearly did.
Yeah, I think you're right. He was under severe pressure, but it was nothing that he'd never seen before, nothing he'd never been through before, not been through before. But that cup run changed it all for him, didn't it? Again, I look back to the Wembley thing, and it was just again such a disappointing end. No, I loved my time at Huddersfield. I've always said that my best time in football was at Huddersfield, which makes it bittersweet when I look back at the Peterborough game, when I look back at the Wembley, and the penalty shootout where we lost on penalties, and it's like part of it's gut wrenching because we could have done so much better. We could have won so much more, but didn't. But
I do have a couple of videos that might cheer you up, actually, Phil, because that Carlisle game was, again, shades of Peterborough almost. It was a midweek game. I remember it was windy, wasn't it? I think you took the corner and Jacko claims the goal, doesn't it? I'm not sure if it went all the way in myself watching it back.
Yeah.
But Jacko claims it, so you're not gonna mess with Jacko, are you? So he claims the first one. Darren Bullock scores with a header, which I think it's Tony Craig, isn't it? The goalkeeper sort of pushes it up, and then it lands in the net. And then my favourite goal that I ever saw at Leeds Road happens, and it comes from you playing on the left wing. And I think I fancy playing that to have a look.
Ball in, and the ball gets up there, Phil Starbuck. The 25th minute of the second half. It looked as though he was going to jig to the left, and he went right and hit a rocket shot. The goalkeeper had no chance up into the top corner of the net.
You
know I'm going to ask you about the celebration as well afterwards, don't you, with Ian Dunn? You know that's
57,
coming.
57, Phil. You had a good season
Sorry?
there. 57th goal of the season, it said there. I didn't think you did that well, mate.
Oh, there we go, yeah.
It was worth it. It was worth it. But what a goal, Phil. That must be up there with one of your very favourites. But that just, when that hit the stanchion, I think 13-year-old me was like, we're going to go to Wembley. It was an amazing night, genuinely. And that goal was, the pick of them all, I would say as a fan. But that was one of my favourite. That's if you ask me to name my 10 favourite goals of Huddersfield Town of all time, that would rank very highly in there.
I've actually got a list because you sent me some goals.
Yeah, we'll do that towards the end. Yeah, sure.
Mate, easy. It's my number one. The whole thing was just, you try something and it comes off. I loved having my back to goal. And then obviously when it got flicked onto me, I just had such a good first touch. And I saw Boothie was running around me to my right, because I got my back to goal towards the left wing, that left side. And I knew as I saw him going straight away, I'm thinking he's going to be my decoy to drop a shoulder and go the other way. And then all of a sudden, I've gone the other way and there's a lad straight in front of me. And I just don't know how. I just kind of nipped it to the side and smashed it. And you could not have put it any more perfect into the corner. And it nearly took the stanchion off, didn't it? And
a thunder bastard, as they get called these days.
Yeah, one of those bad boys.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm so proud of that goal and so happy that it happened in Huddersfield shirt.
And then Wembley, obviously, well, there's the away game against Carlisle where Carlisle go 2-0 up very quickly. And it's, Kosi, you went to this game, didn't you? I think I was a little bit young. It was a school night and whatnot, so I don't think I was allowed. But you have stories about being chased back through Carlisle, don't you? And what have you back to your car and stuff.
Yeah, Darren Bullock said that if it had known at the time, it'd have helped us matter a few before I got sparked. But honestly, Phil, I don't know what you felt, but I felt like the world were caving in round us because the crowd, I remember they were right on top. I think some of them were like invading the track when they'd scored, and they were absolutely on top of us. Honestly, it was incredible. And that injury time, I think Warnock's talked about it a few times. They're playing all these injury times now because of the new rules and stuff, but it felt like plus 15 back then. It were horrible, man.
Yeah, it was. We were proper under the cosh. It was real squeaky bum time, wasn't it? Not just for you lot, but for us. Flipping heck. But what a relief when the referee blew. And what joy. Almost unbelief that we've done it, and we're going to play at Wembley, every school boy's dream. But yeah, it was a very tough match. It was very intense. That their fans were always going to be up for it, weren't they? And that they caused such an atmosphere, and then obviously the Huddersfield fans tried to match that as well, and it was absolute fire. It was brilliant.
And Huddersfield Town move on to Wembley. The celebrations were brilliant. I've seen a lot of the celebrations; they were fantastic. And Huddersfield Town are at Wembley, and I know Huddersfield Town lose the game. It's the goal, Richard Logan's goal, is phenomenal, isn't it? How it goes right in the top corner, the net ripples, and it's a really great set piece, isn't it? But I know we lose the game, and penalties probably won't talk about that. But especially if we speak to Tommy Cowan, we probably won't mention those penalties. But
yeah, best was it?
Whatever you say, I know you'll be disappointed, but you were part of a team that ended a barren run of 56 years that Huddersfield Town hadn't been to Wembley. And I know it's disappointing, but being able to just get to Wembley for Huddersfield Town at that time was absolutely huge. And that set Huddersfield Town up for the season. It allowed us to go out and buy Pat Scully, Tom Cowan, real cult heroes and players that we loved. And Paul Reed again in the summer. And it allowed Huddersfield Town to move on. So even if we lost that game, it really allowed Huddersfield Town to move to another level. So, we lost a game, okay, but what that game did for Huddersfield Town was I wouldn't say immeasurable, but because you can measure it, but it really helped move Huddersfield Town forward, I think, Phil.
Yeah, it was very significant, wasn't it? And not just from a football perspective, from a whole town perspective, it gave Huddersfield a bit of a buzz, didn't it? And there's a real positivity about, being in Huddersfield. And it just shows you the power of what a football team can do for a town, and how important sport is and how important football is to many people in many places around the UK. And it was just such a great day. The whole experience was fantastic. You even take the result away from it, like you've already said. Some amazing memories, and I've still got my kit from that day. I've still got the captain's armband. The captain's armband, believe it or not, is in my little drawer next to my bed. It's where it stays. I know where it is. Sometimes I get it out and have a look at it. And,
just put it on and
just get it out, have a look at it, and just have a little think back and everything leading up to it, and the walking out before the game and the noise and the atmosphere. I remember the day before, stood on the very penalty spot and looking at the goal, thinking, if I get a penalty tomorrow, I'm going to put it top left. And then I remember putting the ball down for the penalty and looking up and seeing just a massive bank of Huddersfield fans, thinking, flipping heck. And then, and thinking to myself, okay, I made a decision yesterday, top left. That's where I'm going. And of course, it was top left, but a little bit top left too much. And smacked the crossbar. But the whole experience, my goodness me, I wouldn't swap it for anything. It was absolutely brilliant.
Not only did you manage to walk Huddersfield Town out at Wembley, there's another game which was incredibly significant just a week or two later as well, where you got to walk out the last Huddersfield Town team at Leeds Road as well. And from memory, you were just pipped a Player of the Year award by Steve Francis as well. Looking back, it feels a bit harsh, does that? Although Steve Francis was excellent that season, but for me, that was one of probably your best season at Huddersfield, that 93-94 season. You know, when you look at the goals you scored, how you led us to Wembley, and then it's the final game of the season at Leeds Road. There's a lot of emotion in the day. A young boy from across the road puts us 1-0 up against Lee Martin, who was from Huddersfield as well, the Blackpool goalkeeper, and came back as physio. Lovely bloke, Lee Martin. And then this happened.
And here's a chance for Dunn and for Starbuck, and Phil Starbuck has restored Huddersfield Town's lead. And how appropriate that Huddersfield's skipper, Phil Starbuck, should poach that goal.
And so whatever, I know you're going to say you're disappointed with some aspects of at Huddersfield Town, maybe, not being promoted and the Wembley thing, but to score the last goal at Leeds Road is something that will be remembered in 100 years. It'll go down in folklore forever, that the last goal scored at Leeds Road, Huddersfield, in a game, in a stadium, where Dennis Laws played, Frank Worthington. They won the league 3 years running in the 1920s. Bill Shankly, all that. The last goal is scored by Phil Starbuck, and that must mean something as well to you. That you've taken us out like that as well.
Oh, it was massive. It makes you feel so privileged and so proud. I remember the week leading up to that last match, and all the players, just chatting. Oh, wouldn't it be great to be the last player to score? But then it was like, oh no, but we need to know the priorities that we win the match. But then it was quickly turned around. But wouldn't it be great to be the last player to score at Leeds Road? And you always hope. I went on the pitch. My first thought was that we want to get a result and we want to win for the fans. The biggest thing was that we won the match. I just feel so blessed and fortunate that I was the last person ever to score there, and feel so humbled that my name's in history in Huddersfield. I absolutely, I can't tell you how much I loved my time in Huddersfield. It was the first time in a football club where I felt that I belonged, and that's really important. And I had a really good rapport with the fans. Yeah, every play I was a spell where you lose a bit of form and you're going to get a bit of stick, and that happened. But all in all, my goodness me, what a fantastic club. Great fans. and some unbelievable memories. And that one against Blackpool and scoring that last goal. But yeah, what a great time. Great memories that no one can ever take away. So awesome.
We'll go through the final season quickly, and then we'll move on to the good stuff. Town 94-95, moving into the new stadium. Obviously, you were very big in terms of being one of the forefront players. Moving into the new stadium. Town brought in Paul Reed over the summer, and we started the season really well. With just one defeat in 15, but by this point, you're probably not playing as much as you would like to at that point. I watched the season review back, and I think there's a chat with you and Neil Warnock on there, sort of saying that you've probably not hit the same form. Had you just signed a new contract in the summer as well, and the club were desperate to keep you because you were outstanding the previous season? How did that season go for you? And
I don't think that what Neil said was true or fair. I think I was playing really well. I think that I was feeling really fit. I was looking forward to the season. Things had gone well. The team was playing well. We were training well. We'd won the County Cup. We'd beaten Leeds, and we beat them 3-1, I believe, in the County Cup. So I lifted the first trophy in the new stadium as well, which was a great honour.
Is it the Yorkshire Electricity Cup? That was that, wasn't it? I think
something like
it was called at the time. Yeah.
So me and Neil didn't really see eye to eye at times. So I just don't think that. I don't think I was one of his boys. Do you know what I mean? I don't think that he wanted me to stay. And I think as I look back, in the moment, I didn't want to stay either because of him, and we weren't hitting it off. And then he took the captaincy off me without telling me, and I found out the next day and then that evening in the newspapers in the Examiner. And so I went into the office the next day raging and like, well, what are you doing? Why didn't you tell me? And why did you let me find out in the paper? What's wrong with you? And so we had a Barney, and that was the beginning of the end, really. I think that I was a little bit headstrong and in my sense of what I did next. And, I initiated the move when I moved to Sheffield United. And I wish I'd waited. No, I should have waited. It's easy in hindsight, isn't it? When you're in the moment, I felt humiliated because he'd taken the captaincy off me and put it in the paper without telling me, which I also thought was a disgrace. But I think now looking back, as you're older and you're wiser, it was all part of his plan. He wanted me probably out of the way. He wanted to use the money to get better players, or other players, should I say, and use my wages to get other players in. But no, it's just the way he did it. If it had been honest and said, "Listen, Phil, I want to use your wage and get one or two players in, so I'm going to have to let you go, or we need to sort out a move because you've just signed a new 3-year deal," I'd have been like, "Well, okay, let's talk it through and see what that might look like and where I might go." But it was all underhanded, and he didn't do it well, and so yeah, that was the year that he came off my Christmas card list.
Yeah, he's gone a bit nuclear there, hasn't he? Rather than the nicer method. You had quite an interesting career after Huddersfield, didn't you? You ended up in Holland and the Netherlands at one point. Burton, I think, under Nigel Clough, maybe. Just looking at the timelines, and then you had your own managerial career, didn't you, as well?
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. I went to where did I go? I went to Sheffield United. Then I left Sheffield. I went to Bristol City, Oldham Athletic. The irony, I played for Warnock again at Oldham Athletic. The irony. but the Premiership in Holland was amazing. It really suited me because you didn't have to run that much. It was all ball to feet. So I was happy as Larry.
Phil, did Warnock sign you, or were he there when you did he come in when you were there?
No, he came in and asked me to go over. So I went over and trained for a week or two. And no, I didn't even train. Where was I? I was at Plymouth Argyle. Mick Jones, remember Mick Jones that came to Huddersfield with Warnock? Well, Mick went to Plymouth as manager, and I played for Mick there for a few months, and then went to Oldham on loan, and I got my picture in the paper that first night. My first training session, I ruptured my Achilles tendon. So then I stayed at Oldham with to get my rehabilitation done, and then I ended up playing about, I don't know, six games for Oldham, something ridiculous like that.
That's a shame, but the managerial career struck me as quite interesting because I remember keeping an eye on it at the time, because you kind of think the way football fans think is you think, oh, he played under Brian Clough, I wonder if he's going to be a good manager, kind of thing. And I remember you actually had a couple of seasons, was it Hensford, where you were quite riding high on top of the league, weren't you, at certain points? And it looked like you might be the next sort of one off the line, but and then it all kind of just sort of, I can't really tell what happened. It all sort of seemed to fade away a little bit on when I look at that.
I enjoyed it. It was a great learning curve, dealing with players from the other side of the fence. I loved the training aspect. I wanted to play football, but there's also a time when you've got to knock it long, and there is a time to do that. And Hensford was great, but then I went to Leeds in the conference, and that was amazing. That's probably my biggest kind of thing that I did in management, that we stayed up that year because we had the smallest of budgets, and we're playing against teams that my budget was $4,000 a week. We're playing against Cambridge United, have got like $29,000 a week. Woking, they had $600,000 a year. And when and managers would they'd talk, and it was funny. They'd always say, "So what's your budget?" And I'm like, "What's that got to do with it? What do you want to know our budget for?" No, but tell us what's your budget. I say, "Oh, $4,000." So no, not your wages. What's the team budget? That is the flipping team budget, and my wages are included in that. So that year we stayed up. So that was a real great achievement, for a team that was on doing it on a shoestring, with players that didn't have the ability of some of the players we're playing against week in, week out. But maybe something I learned from Clough and Warnock, that you've got to do things different then. And we had a team that were fit, and they were together. We had nights out. We were together. They'd run through a brick wall for each other. So that was a great season at Leeds. One that I'm really proud of, that we stayed in the conference.
And then you've gone into construction and other things, haven't you? After football.
Well, funny enough, my last managing club was Grantham Town, and I was getting involved in construction. And I went back to college to become a joiner. And the chairman at the football club at Grantham was a builder. And he said, "Phil, come and watch us play. We're having a nightmare." So I looked at the paper. They're bottom of the league come Christmas. So statistically, if you're bottom of the league come Christmas, you're going down. I went to watch them play on the Thursday. They lost for the fourth time, lost 4-0. The team were a shambles. And I'm like, flipping it, these are shocking. So the chairman said, "Phil, please come and have a go at saving us, because we can't afford as a club to go down again." So I said, "Listen, you're in such a drastic place. It needs drastic measures. So if you want me to come in, you're going to have to trust me." And he said, "Phil, you've got carte blanche, do what you want." So I said, "Get the secretary in, because he needs to be in early, and he needs to sharpen his pen, because he's going to flipping need it." And so I got the first team in the home dressing room. and I brought 15 players in that I knew into the away dressing room. I got every player into my office one at a time from the current squad and sacked every one of them apart from the striker, who was supposedly the star striker. And then I got the secretary to sign 15 new players. By that time, we had about half an hour left, and so we had a bit of a five-a-side. And we go to Birmingham to play our first match, and we won 4-1. In fact, we won our first 4 games, which they'd not won 4 games on the trot for I don't know how long. And even though statistically, bottom of the league come Christmas, you're going down, we actually finished about 6 points from the playoff. We had an absolutely amazing run in, and it was fantastic. Like a bit like Huddersfield Wembley thing, Grantham was buzzing. And, when the football team does well, the town or the city seems to, get the vibe off that. And then so the next year, I'm excited about the next year. The chairman had to resign because he was his dad was dying and his wife was seriously ill. And there was 15 committee members. I don't know if you've ever been involved in a committee. They're an absolute pain in the backside because they talk crap and nothing ever gets done. So there was one guy on the committee that I didn't really see eye to eye with. He was a car salesman. He became the new chairman. And he phoned me halfway through my pre-season preparations, and I was trying to get big clubs in to, increase the revenue. And he phoned me. He said, "Oh, Phil." I said, "How you doing, mate?" "All right." He said, "Oh, mate, just want to let you know we've had an emergency board meeting. We've decided to sack you. We're letting you go." I went, "Yeah, all right. What do you really want?" I thought he was joking. He said, "No, I'm being serious. We're letting you go." I said, "Well, why? What's the reason?" And he said, "We don't feel that you're taking the club forward." And I just laughed. I just said, "You're a flipping idiot, mate." So after what we've done last year and the pre-season that we've got planned, I'd sooner you say that you didn't like me and you're sacking me because you didn't like me. And I've actually looked you in the eye and shook your hand because I know you'd been honest. But yeah.
Strange.
Yeah,
was that enough to put you off management after that?
That was my last experience of management, and I said I'd never do it again, and I've never done it since. Although there are parts of football I really miss, and the dressing room and the banter and the strategic side. And I like growing teams and getting the best out of teams. But I left. I got all my badges, got my A badge, my advanced coaching license at the time. I became a generic tutor, so I delivered qualifications for the FA. But I was just sick of the crap. Chairman that backstabbed you. It was the rise of Facebook and social media. You have a bit of a dodgy time one week and you get battered. Next week, you're the best thing since sliced bread when you get a win and everyone wants to buy you a pint. There's nothing in between. It's like so fickle. I just had enough. And I've never been back since.
Phil, could you believe Warnock went back to Huddersfield and then kept him up and then carried on this season? What did you think looking from afar? Just one job too many. I think we all thought that at a certain point, and he did it again.
No, knowing Neil, he's almost got like the Midas touch, hasn't he? He has done it so often. He's been to so many clubs. He's got such an unbelievable track record that I actually felt he's going to do it again. And do you know what? I'm really glad that he did. And it's just great for Huddersfield Football Club. It's great for Huddersfield Town. And I hope they have a great season this year. I just, I've got no, I don't feel any, bad things towards Neil. And certainly not the football club, because I love the club. But, I just hope they do really well. And I hope that the club progress, and it'd be wonderful, see them at the top half of the table and challenging for the Premier League again.
Were you slightly conflicted when it was the playoff final in 2022 when it was Nottingham Forest versus Huddersfield at Wembley? I'd imagine living down there and growing up Forest and having a time at Huddersfield, I could imagine that you would have been a little bit not quite on the fence, but having difficult emotions, I would imagine.
Listen, I've got absolutely no issues with making tough decisions and making it public. All the way along, Huddersfield, I wanted Huddersfield to win. I had Forest fans saying to me, "Oh, do you think Forest are going to do it?" I said, "I don't know, but I hope Huddersfield win." I had a guy who's a Forest fan, got a Forest YouTube thing. He wanted me to go on to do some like commentating on the game, and he said, "Oh, obviously you want Forest to win?" No, I want Huddersfield to win. And he didn't have me on.
The commentary
his loss.
So no more management, no more commentary. Ruling
Yeah.
himself out of jobs for away.
Yeah,
What a man!
But
What a man!
I enjoyed a couple of times commentating on a couple of Huddersfield games. That was good. So I've done that a couple of times. So yeah, commentary is fantastic. So.
Well, we'll give Radio Leeds a nudge when Matt Glennon's off on one of his jaunts again. So we'll say we've got a man lined up here who'll have a go. Phil, it's been an absolute honour, privilege to speak to you. It's been a lot of fun reliving me and Kosi, reliving our childhood for me, maybe late teens for Kosi. But it's been so much fun sort of speaking to you, and it's great that we can do this and we can induct you into our podcast. Cult Heroes Hall of Fame, if you like, as well. Phil, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for representing Huddersfield Town with the distinction that you did. It's been a lot of fun, and we really appreciate all you did for Huddersfield Town. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Nice to meet you both. Thank you.
Cheers, Phil.
Thank you. Take care.
There's a team that is dear to its followers. The colours are bright blue and white. They're a team of renown, they're the pride of the town, and the game of football is their delight. And all the while upon the field of play, thousands loudly cheer them on the way. Often you can hear them say, who can beat the town today? And then the bells will ring so merrily, and every goal shall be a memory. So town, play up and bring that cup back to Huddersfield. So town, play up and bring the cup back to Huddersfield.